What do you get out of stage work? Because you do a lot of gigging, don't you?
Well, we have done this year. We tend to be very erratic live, and sometimes very erotic too. Yeah, sometimes a group can go, a concert rather, can go very well, and there does seem to be some kind of empathy between the group and the audience, and it's very exciting. Other times, I'm afraid, Orange Juice can be a complete abomination on stage. I'd be the first to admit it. But then, of course, the show must go on, so you just smile and pretend it's something to do, some technical hitch. Well, we started off as a punk rock group called the New Sonics. That was in 1977. And then we really decided that there was no contemporary groups playing the kind of music we liked. And we felt there was a vacuum in the market which we should fill. And we had very Catholic taste. We liked soul, we liked Al Green, we liked a lot of music from the 60s, the Birds. And we decided to combine these influences in a veritable potpourri which became Orange Juice. I think it'd be good if the music business, like a lot of other industries, was decentralised really. But of course, I think we were just a bit weak, and it was far simpler to sign to a major record company. And as a lot of Scottish groups have done since, I mean, we were, I think in many ways, we instigated what's now become known in record company terms as the Scottish scene, and every other week we sign a Scottish group. And when we came down initially to London, they said, oh, a group from Scotland, and furthermore, they didn't really understand the music. I mean, you just have to, I think, be very, very dogmatic with your record company, and you have to take a very, very firm line and tell them exactly what you want and lay down the law, and inevitably there'll be some conflicts, but you've just got to just stick by your guns, really. And I think a lot of young groups, or groups who have just signed up, I hope this doesn't sound patronising, will allow record companies to manipulate them. And I think often that can be really bad. I think we've been damaged to a certain extent in our career, although I'm not bitter about that, really. How do we live? Well, we live on about 80 quid a week each. Grace gets a bit more. Grace is our manager, and that's because she's a girl. And I know that sounds a wee bit reactionary and sexist, but girls still do like to spend their money on makeup and fur coats and minks and diamonds.
Well, Orange Juice and myself working together came about through a series of happy accidents, I suppose. I've known Edwyn and Zeke for a long time. Edwyn used to come and stay in my house when they used to first come to London, and Zeke I used to know years and years ago in the dim and distant past in Glasgow. And we have a mutual friend called Alan Horn, who, whenever the group sacked their previous manager towards the end of last year, suggested that for some reason that I might be a good candidate for the job, and they've become an obsession with me ever since.
Oh, Grace is really tough. She's tougher than any man I know.
I don't tend to find I have many problems with the group themselves. We're good friends, and I think probably one of the reasons they asked me to do the job was that they needed a competent administrator, but also somebody who understood what they wanted to do and what their attitude was. And I suppose through our friendship, I do understand, I have complete sympathy with that. So in my dealings, my business dealings on the group's behalf, I would reflect their ideals or their attitude, I hope. I do feel quite strongly about Orange Juice, funnily enough. I do feel they are a real quality act in the middle of so much mediocrity and just pat rubbish, you know.
We've gone through numerous line-up changes, as you probably know, and it's just, you seem to, as you, Orange Juice, as I look back on my career, it just seems that there's all this debris, you know, that Orange Juice have left in their wake, and you really, inevitably, you just hurt a lot of people's feelings, and splits are often bitter. even though it is a mutual thing. There's always one party that feels they're hard done by. So that's been the hardest thing, really.
Do you have internal rows?
No, not now. But we have before. It's always, you know, a conflict of musical interest, really, in different directions that various members want to pursue as they get more confidence in the group.
And that's always those rows have usually led to the splits, have they?
Yeah.
Do you socialise very much with the musicians that you work with, or?
Yeah, well, I socialise with Zeke. Zeke and myself are very close, and we just decided, because we'd got a very good working relationship and a good social relationship, and that they were quite similar ideologically, that we continue as a duo, and we just augment that basic nucleus with a floating pool of musicians, which is what we've done, and that seems to work very well.
Your music days start back in Zimbabwe, where you were born.
Yeah, only on an interest level, really. It wasn't a profession as such. When I was in Zimbabwe, it was more a hobby, a very strong hobby, I should say. But I actually started doing music professionally when I moved to Scotland, and actually developed my musical ideas while I was over there. So the Zimbabwean connection, I suppose, I was a student at the time, and I was quite physically close to my parents, so I couldn't really develop that because they were more interested in getting me to be the next Prime Minister of Zimbabwe.
Really?
Well, something like that.
Your father was a schoolmaster as well, wasn't he? Yeah,
he was, yeah.
So what happened that you had to leave very quickly? What caused that?
It sounds really dramatic on paper, on an interview. I left quickly, but not that quickly. I mean, I didn't have sort of a week to leave or anything, but I had about maybe a few months to leave before I got into trouble. It was just because I had a curious mind, and I had a few people I was working with who were interested in staging plays and writing music. And unfortunately, you couldn't really write about anything of any substance in a sort of state like Rhodesia, because they were living a lie most of the time. So anything you wrote about tended to touch upon a sensitive political, whatever, nerve, if you like. So things became very uncomfortable. They started just hassling us, if you like. So I had to leave because of that.
Did you feel you were a marked man?
I think any young person coming out of school at the time was marked. I suppose I was more marked because of my activities, but I think most young people, black young people who were leaving school at the time, were marked, you know, politically.
So how old were you when you arrived in Scotland?
I arrived in Scotland at 18 years of age. Exciting time. I shared a flat with a friend of mine who was fanatical about early Orange Juice. He used to play me all the flexi discs and say, listen to this, I know it's a lot of noise, but listen, there's something underneath there, it's really good. And he used to do that every day. He'd play me these flexi discs, and, you know, and he used to put them up, Orange Juice, on at Glasgow Tech, because he was an entertainment secretary there as well. So that was my earliest introduction of Orange Juice. Mm-hmm.
When you're up on stage, what do you get from the audience yourself?
It depends what kind of an audience it is. If the audience is taking part, and the audience, you know, you're not just... Sometimes you feel like a fool on stage if you've got a very cold audience who look at you as if, what are you doing up there, or something like that. You think, what am I doing up here? I think it's a two-way thing. I think it's like sex, really. I think it's, you've got to have two people, consenting people, before it can be a success.